Hi, everyone. Karen Bernardi here with the Bernardi Group at Caldwell Banker in Boulder, Colorado, and working the surrounding areas with real estate. And today I have with me Bobby Mathieson. Hello, Bobby.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, no worries. We both didn't have to travel far anyway to get together today. Um, and Bobby is with Aspen Property Management. Does a great job. I will say that. We refer him to a lot of our clients, and his company manages a lot of properties. I'll let you give the details, but we've had a lot of questions from our investors in the general community about how is the COVID-19 and our stay-at-home orders, the layoffs, the general economy, how is that affected the investment properties. So we'll go over a couple of questions. And first of all, why don't you tell them where to reach you, and we'll put that on the screen later, but tell us all about you.
So yeah, I'm Bobby Mathieson with Aspen Management. We manage multifamily communities, scattered single-family homes, and some commercial assets all throughout the Denver metro area. Really from Denver over to Golden and up to Longmont, and pretty much everything in between. You can reach me if you have any questions after this at Bobby, that's B-O-B-B-Y, at Aspen-MGMT, like the abbreviation for management.com. I can also be reached at 720-473-6440.
And we'll make sure that goes on the screen so people can see it more slowly and don't have to rewind it 6 times. So, first question that came in from one of my clients and the people that we advertise this to was, what percentage of tenants have not been able to pay so far? Do you have data not just from you, but from maybe associations that you're with?
Yeah, I've got kind of a hybrid answer, and the data was pulled from both, really. So as of last Sunday, a little over 9 out of 10 tenants living in the multifamily housing communities had actually made April's rent payments. Approximately 9% of apartment renters were delinquent, compared to 7.4% at the same point in January and February. So that's a good benchmark to give you an idea. Now, that percentage of delinquent tenants does decrease to about 4.5% when referring to single family dwellings.
Okay.
I would say we do remain optimistic, though. I think we'll see a rebound, but we do expect May to be a little bit worse than April because residents are continuing to experience furloughs, layoffs, and some people may not receive a paycheck during the month of May.
Okay. Yeah, pretty harsh news, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what advice are you giving landlords right now how to weather this? Because landlords have mortgage payments too. They have taxes due this time of year. They have insurance payments due many this time of the year. Well, how are they going to handle this?
That's the golden question. So our strategy to combat this really has been to tell our investors that the name of the game this year, this leasing season, is tenant retention. Over the past, I'd say 6 to 8 years, we've been able to increase rental rates year over year by 3.5% to 5%, in some years even more. While none of us has experienced leasing in the pandemic era, I do anticipate an increased number of days on market if a home has to be brought to market. This, accompanied by social distancing recommendations, are going to make it more difficult to lease a property. Because of that, I tell owners that if they do have a tenant who's been paying rent and caring for the asset in accordance with the lease, do your best to keep them in place. Offer them a rental rate similar to what their rate is now, really no increase, in hopes of tying them into another year lease. Most tenants I found don't want to move. If you can keep them, do so. There's not going to be an increase in revenue, but there won't be a loss in revenue due to vacancy.
Well, you've always been so good at advising me and my clients on it's better to keep the tenant you have, because if you have a month or 2 or 3 of vacancies, if you were going to raise the rent 10%, you've certainly lost it all, by those vacancies. So I think very good. And right now, everybody needs a little love and understanding, landlords and tenants, right?
That's exactly right.
That's right. Now, what regulations, because we've heard so many things, because people are confusing what's happening locally to nationally, and you hear on the news, evictions have stopped, landlords have no recourses. What regulations are you seeing have changed, if any, in the Colorado area for evictions?
So it's a good question. And I think some of that information can become a little bit convoluted because a lot of the info that came out initially was stating that there were plans to halt evictions. And everybody heard that as tenant evictions, when in fact they were referring to owners, saying that they weren't going to evict owners if they fell behind on their mortgage. What I have found up to today is things are ever changing here in the state. Governor Polis has actually held off on any statewide order related to housing. He's really leaving the decisions up to local governments and courts. What he has asked is that you put a pause on eviction enforcement. No local governments have officially frozen rents, but I do know courts in Denver, Mesa, Weld, and Boulder counties have all paused evictions. Last week, the Attorney General encouraged other courts to follow suit on that. Whether they do, it's up to them. And then the Colorado Apartment Association did release a guide to its members last week, recommending landlords become a little bit more flexible during the pandemic. And the guide simply advised landlords to create payment plans, really to establish some sort of plan with tenants who can't pay rent, maybe waiving late fees, suspending evictions, and also foregoing, as I mentioned before, rent increases.
Okay, yeah, well, so really you could still evict if someone was maybe trying to take advantage of the situation or whatever. You could choose to do that, but right now in many places it's going to be delayed.
That's correct. I think that if you still have proper record keeping and you can prove in a court of law that tenants have not performed and you've served them with a notice to pay or quit, they haven't, you filed, you have possession, you could still move forward with that. I wouldn't expect it to be done in a timely manner right now, and I would expect courts to probably show some leniency due to the pandemic.
Yes, of course, we would hope so. Do tenants have an obligation to inform the landlord or you, their property manager, if they are diagnosed with the COVID virus?
Oh, what a good question. Gosh, it would be nice if we could all be made aware of everybody's current health status, but no. I think most landlords would agree that it would be excellent to know if a tenant had been diagnosed with COVID-19. It's not required. It's not required to release your health information. Landlords also need to use extreme caution when asking questions to their current tenants and prospective tenants. The one piece of advice I'd give you is please always remember to abide by federal, state, local guidelines along with fair housing laws. Asking them if they have COVID-19 is similar to asking them any other health questions that you are prohibited from asking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you're really, there's probably not a big reason to ask it if you're not going in their home, you're following the social distancing guidelines. If you're showing, we're not allowed to show now personally anyway. So you're not going to be, but even after time, if you maintain social distancing, it's really not contagious.
That's exactly right. I really, because of,
it's
like
really
you said,
contagious, but let me get this right here,
Sure. The fact that we aren't able to do showings right now is really what keeps us safe, if you will. There isn't really a reason to ask if tenants have advised or they've come to you and said, "Hey, we've fallen on hard times." Nothing prevents them from disclosing the information to you. You just want to be careful what you ask.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And so how do you handle showing, if you have vacancies right now, how are you handling it from both sides? Tenants that want to lease a property and owners that need to lease their property.
Sure. So our team at Aspen, we got together on this early on, and the objective was to get ahead of it. We kind of saw this coming, and how do we get ahead for our owners and not stop the ball rolling, because we knew that some tenants, COVID-19 aside, would be vacating. So, first off, you want to be respectful of your current tenants. Put yourself in their shoes. It's very difficult to try to tell somebody, "Hey, I'm coming in your home with a group of strangers, and we're going to tour the home." Now, fortunately, the shelter in place prevents that, but that will be lifted at some point. Aspen has devised a plan to go virtual for the time being. So if we have an occupied dwelling where tenants have given their notice to vacate, rather than touring the home with prospective tenants, we're going to basically do virtual showings, with somebody and a representative from Aspen conducting the showing, ensuring that that the prospective tenant can see everything that they need to see, ask any questions while the tour is in place. They just can't be present. That will probably change with vacant properties. If you've got a home that's vacant now, you could probably change that a little bit. But right now, our focus is on doing our part to stop the spread, in addition to helping our owners maintain a performing asset.
It's so interesting. I did a call earlier with Chris McGath, the president of Caldwell Banker, Colorado, and we were talking about how much more efficient this is in a lot of ways, that we really don't need to get in our cars as much as we thought we did, to run over and meet someone at a property. Now they can really do all the things we at the Bernardi Group, Caldwell Banker, at my group, we already had in place, all of the Matterport tours and the Google Earth and the video tours and we already had that in place, virtual open houses. So our buyers didn't utilize it as much as they should have, and we didn't insist upon it. Now we insist upon it, and it's working out really well because we don't need to go in the house many times right away. We just don't need to.
Sure. And I heard that. I also heard that with regards to, on the sales side, the inspections. You don't need to necessarily be there for the entire inspection, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's just minimizing the traffic is really what we're trying to do while helping the owners.
Yes, minimize exposure to others, right?
That's exactly
so
right.
If you, for someone that wants to lease right now, what advice are you giving them?
The other side of the coin, good question. So I would advise prospective tenants to begin looking for their new homes as soon as possible. The longer the runway that they have, I think the better off they will be. I think everything is going to be moving a little slower this year. If a home is going vacant, the time to turn it over may be drawn out due to a landlord's inability to get contractors out. Because, if they're not deemed essential, it may be problematic getting someone in the home. So I would start earlier than you normally would while searching for your home. Obviously, I would encourage you to check internet sites daily. You can go to our website, which is aspen-mgmt.com. That's a living, breathing website. Once a property it comes available, it goes up there. Once it's leased, it comes down. And that really does change daily. I'd also encourage anybody searching for a home to be mindful of the shelter-in-place rules that are in effect. Some landlords just simply may not be able to show the property right now. So if you do call and speak with a landlord about a property that's been listed for rent, you may not know right off the bat if it's occupied or vacant. And if it's occupied, a landlord can't just up and show you right now. So patience is key. And start early. Those would be the two things to keep in mind this leasing season.
So you haven't seen vacancy rates go up then yet in the residential market?
No, not yet. I think that a lot of people are preferring to stay in place. If they can. What we did this year is we reached out to our owners early, and I mentioned this earlier. If the owners had the ability to do so, we recommended no price increases for tenants, and let's sign them up for another year in hopes that we just keep the money coming in. A lot of tenants were very, very receptive to that. So I think that the turnover rate within our portfolio is down compared to years past because there were no price increases. So a lot of people stayed in place. I think that the next 1 or 2 months you'll probably see an increase in inventory compared to right now, just because we are still we're still a little early with regards to the leasing season.
Early on the curve, too, of what the economy will show, huh?
Correct.
So you do a splintering, you said, of commercial properties. This is a vision question for you. Crystal ball, get out and polish it here. So what we have found, and went from talking to my clients, from talking to other, industries, what they're finding is maybe they like working from home. Maybe their teams like working from home. So is this going to affect our commercial market? I'm not a commercial real estate agent, but I wonder for the overall commercial leasing market, I'm wondering.
So that's a very good question. And gosh, well, I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't. Now, we do commercial management. We don't do commercial leasing. So I'm not quite as well versed in the commercial leasing side of things. Gosh, because we are in such a tech heavy market, Boulder County, Denver metro area, I feel like a lot of those companies already have the ability to work from home. As you said earlier, most of the things the Bernardi Group is doing right now, you've already been able to do. And I would suspect that a lot of those commercial tenants are in the same boat, where they have the ability to work from home. They may just not be doing it as often. Gosh, I don't know. If the I assume we'd see an increase in vacancies if they do find that their teams prefer to work from home. But a lot of companies do prefer to have that brick and mortar space in place to sort of generate the team building feel.
Yes, I would agree with that with our own team. We went home. We were some of the first that went home. I just thought everybody just get out of the space. We need to be, we've been home now for at least 6-8 weeks. And what I notice is we do well. We do a meeting by Zoom or Google Hangouts every day at 9 and 3, but there is an energy that you really like to have of being in the office with each other. So let's hope that'll stick. I have one last question, and most of these questions came from my clients. So this one I thought was a real life one, which was really good. He says, we have some rental properties in this COVID-19 market, reduced rents with some tenants that one or more have lost their jobs or were laid off for an unknown period. Given that the university basically sent everyone home for the duration and many thousands were impacted in Boulder, and visitors, Airbnbs, etc., will be disrupted for at least the near future. Do you know what the recommendation will be on back rents, broken releases, etc., when the state county says they won't enforce evictions or non-payment? We were all put in a new ball game. Our big concern is long-term prospects. What do you forecast for Boulder rental market if the university hasn't decided how it will function? So there's a lot of questions in there, but you can see that this client of mine has a lot of rental properties, and he's depended a lot on the lower income market and student rentals. Now, oops.
Sure, and that's it's an interesting one, Karen, because it's been such a stable market for so long. Student rental housing market is it's typically it's not a volatile market. You know what you're getting. You've got rent all year. But so to answer the first part of that, I would say I don't know what position Boulder is going to take on back rents. As a manager to a landlord, I would say I think it's imperative to be able to demonstrate that you have been willing to work with tenants, meaning establish some sort of payment plan, waiving late fees. I know that some owners, and these are single family owners, single family housing owners that own multiple units, have agreed to finance rent. For example, there were some people in the service industry that fell on hard times in April, and they struck a deal with the owners where they said, okay, here's the deal. We're not able to make April's rent, but if you'll agree to finance it over the following 4 months, come May, our rent will pick back up and we'll pay you a 4th of April through the next 4 months. And that owner was able to do that. And so that was kind of a win-win. The tenants didn't lose their home. The owner was okay doing that. Every owner is different. I don't know what people's mortgages are like. I don't know what their overhead is. But if you can do that, I think that certainly helps. Make sure you're able to
interrupt for just a minute, if I may.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think tenants need to understand as well, like you said, an owner has a obligation to his mortgage company many times. An owner may be depending on that money to put food on his table.
Absolutely, Karen, and that's a huge point that we sent an email to all of our tenants explaining that a lot of the landlords, they're not real estate moguls who own 10, 15, 20, 100 properties. A lot of them may be single unit owners where they have that one property that our tenants are borrowing. They rely on that rent to come in each and every month to pay the mortgage. The cash flow on it for, like you said, it could be to keep their lights on, to put food on the table. So 1 month of unpaid rent for some of these owners is quite a big hit. And so I think it is important that tenants do understand that not every one of these owners can just afford to shell out free rent for unforeseen future. Okay, second question in that one. So let's see. What do you forecast the Boulder rental market if the university hasn't decided on how to function? Well, if the university hasn't decided on how it will function, then that's tough. I mean, rental properties that are on the hill, located in South Boulder, around the Goss Grove area, all of those that are sort of deemed student areas or highly populated student areas, they'll be directly affected, I think, a little more than others if CU does elect to not reopen for physical classes in the fall. It's tough to tell an owner right now what to do because it's hurry up and wait. We have to see what CU is going to do. If they're going to invite the students back, then I think it's game on. If they don't, then I think it's time to come up with some sort of other, contingency plans. I think it also depends, Karen, on when the leasing was done for the asset. A lot of the student housing, or excuse me, a lot of the student rentals, they do a lot of pre-leasing, meaning that that they're leased already for the upcoming year. So if those leases are in place, then I think those are going to be discussions landlords are going to have with tenants, because at the end of the day, the lease is in place regardless of if school's in place.
I see.
So the landlord may be able to hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah, they're a contract. And this is a real, I would say, we don't know. Of course, I just was on a run the other day and I ran through the campus. And of course, it's just, no one is there. And it's so sad. I mean, it would be so distressing and just heartbreaking if we didn't have that. We can all get frustrated with students, with traffic in downtown Boulder area, but this community would not be the same without that gorgeous university. And it would be so sad to not have it in the vibrant state that it was last year.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Gosh, having lived in Boulder for years, it's like you said, you feel it when they're here, you feel it when they leave. But it's at the end of the day, the student population and faculty, it's 25% of the population of Boulder.
And the largest employer.
Exactly.
The largest employer. And no one's suggesting that CU won't exist anymore. It's just, how is it going to exist in a different fashion? Something like that. So, well, thank you so very much. This has been incredibly interesting, and I look forward to having another discussion with you in 30 days when our economy is back on track and we're open again and safe and we have a vaccine and we're healthy. I'm really going for all the optimism I can.
I love it. That's what we need, Karen. And thank you so much for having me. If you have any questions, you know where to find me, and everybody else. Again, this is Bobby with Aspen Management. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for the words of wisdom. We sure appreciate you.
Take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, bye-bye.